I'll wait a minute for the public to join. Okay, we have at least one attendee, so that tells me the meeting is open to the public. Welcome everyone to the City of Bremerton Public Works Committee for Tuesday, August 16th, 2022. Our first item up on general issues is the update on the 2022 Stormwater Comprehensive Plan. We have Chance Barthum, and do I see Gunnar out there? Don't see Gunnar, so Chance, go
Gunner's
ahead.
here.
Oh, I got a review. You know, I've got the extended Hollywood Squares +3 view, and I don't see Gunnar. So we'll go. Oh, there he is. Okay, welcome, Gunnar. Chance and Gunnar, take it away.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. We are here to talk about the Stormwater Comprehensive Plan update that we've been working on for a little bit. With us, we also have Phil Struck, who is the consultant helping us with the development of the plan, and of course Gunnar. He is our stormwater project engineer who makes the construction side happen and getting these systems in the ground when we get grant funds mostly, I'm happy to say. So the stormwater program relies on our comprehensive plan to set the program priorities, goals, and objectives over the next 6 years. And on occasion, it is amended to meet new permit requirements or changes as they happen. It's a fairly flexible document, but it does pretty much establish where we're going and documents what we're doing. So next slide, please. Thank you, Hillary, by the way. All right, so here's our purpose, right? Pretty straightforward. Identify what we need, our priorities, and our budget for the next 6 years. And according to the RCW, this should be done every 6 years. And it's been a while since we've updated this plan. So we're kind of catching up on a lot of things. So our program plan of objectives, we're looking at preventing flooding, reducing discharge of pollutants, which is a big deal with our Npds permit. And we want to protect our aquatic resources. So how are we going to do that? And then we have to develop our 6-year and a 20-year CIP. And then with the 6-year, we get into more fine tuning of the actual costs and the financial needs of what our program is going to require of us. One of the biggest things we have to contend with is the Npds permit called the Stormwater Permit. It's a very unique and very it's very prescriptive. It tells us what we're supposed to do, and it gives us pretty defined deadlines for completing those tasks. So as far as the program needs, we need to make sure that we cover the costs and the revenues are balanced and identify what the plan needs, all based on what the system actually needs to maintain its operational functionality, as well as what we have to do to meet permit requirements. On the right-hand side, you can see the general scope of our program and what's called an MS4. It's Municipal Separate Stormwater Sewer System. And that's what you see in a lot of regulatory guidance. Next slide, please. So these are some of our regulatory requirements that we have to meet for just stormwater projects that we get to complete, to make improvements or repairs or put in new stormwater outfalls. It's very, again, daunting on occasion. The biggest holdup we have nowadays is a core permit because of there's a backlog and it just takes forever to get a project permitted. So something that used to take a year now takes a couple of years. And all of these local regulations, we as the city pretty much control them, which is beneficial to getting projects and plans through. We've been looking pretty seriously at our fish barrier issues. Currently, we have 3 projects that are addressing those on Ostrich Creek. And then as part of the permit, we're required to meet water quality standards TMDLs, which is the total maximum daily load of a certain pollutant that can be discharged into the water. You've got the issue with the treatment plant with the phosphorus and the nitrogen, and those are part of the TMDL, which is a water quality cleanup plan that is approved, is created by the Department of Ecology and approved by the EPA. Next slide, please. So in the Puget Sound, because of well, quite a few issues, you know, significant development and everything else that's going on around here, killer whales, salmon, just the habitat in general, the growth that we're experiencing, really, stormwater is one of the top priorities for Puget Sound. And the Npds permit is the driver that is used by ecology and the EPA to say, hey, cities and counties, states, you need to do these things to protect your environment. So, as you know, it's pretty focused and driven. If you're in the regulatory community or you work on other committees, you see that it's spread out through everything. Stormwater is a significant source of pollution. So they're focused on resolving that with, you know, creating these requirements, and the permit specifically addresses those. So one of the things that we have to deal with is accommodate growth while maintaining water quality and habitat. And then, of course, the more facilities we get, the more we have to inspect, maintain, and operate. And that gets into staffing, because it takes a lot of staff to do these things correctly to meet the specific requirements of the permit, which is a huge task. There's a lot of documentation for everything. How many sites you inspect, you clean, down to, or working with the public and private property owners and private systems. So in planning, we need to consider what the increasing costs because of the regulations and new development. And of course, inflation is a big deal nowadays. And we have to balance our rate revenues and our costs. So we're looking at that in this plan pretty seriously. Next slide, please. So these are this is our system. These are our system assets, our attributes. So we have catch basins, or conveyance piping, our street sweeping, how many miles we have, private treatment facilities that we inspect, which is actually up to about 1,000 right now. Our city-owned treatment facilities, so our modular wetland treatments, our biopods, our stormwater ponds, our canister systems, various devices that are out there. And then with the upcoming 2023 requirement, we're going to have to be doing some source control inspecting at individual businesses, which is going to be a significant lift. Our program management side of things, we're developing a new source control program that has to be in place at the end of this year. We have code updates that I'm working on that have to be also updated by the end of this year. Stormwater pollution prevention plans, that's what a SWIP is, and individual Npds permits. Those are made for facilities that have different types of activities, such as our fleet maintenance facility, our park storage facilities at Gold Mountain Golf Course, because of all the maintenance activities up there. And then, of course, some of our water treatment facilities, because of the amount of chemicals stored on site, we have a SWIP for those. Industrial stormwater general permit is a recent push by the Department of Ecology. They have made a focus of Kitsap County to find as many properties and businesses that fit that criteria and issue them new permits. Last year, we had a permit issued to our wastewater treatment plant, and we were fortunate enough to get a conditional non-exposure for the Oyster Bay facility. You know, those are the kind of things that, you know, that have been going on. They've picked up about 6 new ISGPs within the city limits for other commercial properties. Now, the Stormwater Management Action Plan is a citywide effort to look at all 24 of our stormwater basins. And with that, we have to look at the water quality of each basin and essentially figure out what our highest priorities are related to water quality for the receiving water of that site. And then we need to focus on defining what's needed to increase water quality and reduce the pollutant load that's going out there through treatment or retention on site, and then come up with a plan. So we're focused on two basins in particular, Kitsap Lake and Oyster and Ostrich Bay. And those are going to be our priorities for this time around. But there's also, this has to be done pretty soon. So we'll have other contracts going out to help us complete this work. Next slide, please. Growth and new development. So on average, we're getting about 5% new infrastructure per year. So far, we've had over 200 catch basins and 30 treatment facilities in the last few years. And of course, with that, we get increased frequency and complexity of development inspections and O&M that's required of us or of the private property owners to the HOAs that we have, which seems to be every plat that we get now is going to be an HOA. And that by itself has its own concerns because HOAs can dissolve without any notice to the city. So there's a lot to be considered with that. Now, what we're experiencing is increasing costs due to regulations and inflation, of course. And everybody knows our goal is to avoid the major rate increases. And we didn't do a rate increase last year, I don't believe. So we're doing really well, I think. And then we're maintaining regional parity. We work closely with all the other agencies in the area, so all the other cities and whatnot, to really make our dollars stretch for public education outreach. And then with our Ostrich Creek and our Pine Road Public Works Trust Fund loans, we're going to have to start paying that back next year. So we're going to end up with $800,000 a year debt service that is going to go towards paying those off. Next slide, please. Oh, and we're right in the middle. If you look at the rate schedule on the right, you'll see that we are right in the middle of everybody. We're not above, we're not at the bottom. So we're in a pretty good spot at the moment. Okay, next slide. Now the permit requirements is pretty straightforward. You know, they have certain standards and established requirements inside the permit itself that are pushing us to do more maintenance of catch basins and pipe cleaning and keeping our treatment systems online and functioning. And that's where we end up pushing the edge a little bit with the staff that we have. And, you know, so we're looking at that as in this comp plan. Our source control staffing, you know, do 800 inspections over a 5-year period. Yeah, that's pretty significant because you have enforcement actions and everything else. And, you know, the biggest part is to help them meet the water quality requirements and pollution prevention requirements that we have to meet, so it doesn't get into our system, because once it hits our system, we're responsible for it. So really, it's a big public education outreach effort to begin with, and then we go into the more stringent enforcement side of things. So right now, FCS Group is doing a rate study, and with that, it will inform the plan on where we are and what we need to do as far as our finances go. Next slide, please. So basically, we're talking about the stormwater permit requirement for code updates in 2022. We also want to look at our low impact development, which is what LID stands for, codes to make sure we're still good on those. And there's a couple changes we need to make. And then project vesting, there's a couple of other issues that we want to address in the code updates, because we don't like to do code updates unless, you know, we can package them together. At least I don't. This doesn't make any sense if we don't address issues. Our stormwater comp plan addresses the 6-year CIP. Actually, I would probably let somebody else talk. Our capital program is pretty robust. You know, we've got a pretty good plan laid out for the next few years, and we've incorporated a lot of treatment retrofits. We're looking at some stormwater system improvements and updates, repairs, things of that nature. And then we're looking, our existing rate structure is being evaluated. Next slide. So what we're looking for is basically what you see. Code updates for source control, LID, private facilities, our own M record keeping. We're getting that dialed in. It's like steering a bus sometimes, you know, it takes a little time to navigate the corners. Stormwater management action plan, that's going to be ongoing. So in 23, we have to have a deliverable provided to ecology because I have a grant to help us pay for that. And that'll be for our first 3 basins. And we have 21 basins left to do the work to get them, you know, figure out what we need to do in those individual basins. We're looking at adding a source control inspector in 23 to do all of the 800 inspections, and then possibly adding some laborers to help our staff, our maintenance staff, keep all these stormwater systems operating and functional, as well as cleaning our pipe system on a schedule that we have yet to define. Next slide. And this is our schedule for the plan. This is how we see it moving forward. So at some point in here, we're thinking in September, October, we'll end up with a public outreach component where we haven't decided yet if we do an open house or virtual type of a thing. But we do want to get some public input and review. We can always take input and try to make the plan better and more comprehensive. But that's pretty much it. Sorry, guys, I know Phil and Gunnar are here and I probably hogged up all the time, but
Hey, no worries. They can be the front for answering the questions. So we'll open it up to questions. Hannah?
Thanks, Eric. Okay. All right, so I have a few questions just up top. I guess the first one that any of my constituents are going to ask is, yes, we are in the middle of the list as far as cost goes on stormwater tax, but we are $17.54 as opposed to $10.42 for Kitsap County, which is where most of our neighbors are. So I just would like something that I can say to them. It's like, how come Kitsap County can do it for so much less?
well, I can answer that.
Excellent.
It's mainly they just have more population. It really, that's what it comes down to. They have more population. They have more essentially rural areas, and then you have some urban centers. So when you take that into account mathematically, they're able to perform a lot more with less money from individual property owners. You know, that's unfortunate, but it's just the reality.
So are you saying that they have each person per capita more or less has more property, more not impervious area?
Not necessarily. I think that each property owner pays a stormwater fee on their taxes. So with them, they collect it through property tax in your escrow account.
Okay, so the $10, I'm sorry, Chance.
So you take that on an annual basis. I guess it's broken down in escrow payments. That's what I live in the county. So that's really how it comes out, is it take it out of my escrow. But I also live in a neighborhood, but there are urban centers like this where you have some lots that are small, like up in Silverdale or Manchester, or areas like that. And those where you have more consolidated housing, the county, of course, gets a lot more money. And then, of course, they also have Silverdale, and that's all county property, all the commercial. So they've got a lot more commercial areas where they do end up getting a substantial amount of their money from that. And then you have us, we're just in a confined area like Paulsbo, Bainbridge, well, I wouldn't say Bainbridge Island, but Port Orchard. You know, we're in a very confined area, and we're gonna carry a heavier load financially.
Thank you. I would really like that as a small leaflet. Just a couple of more questions. So when alterations are proposed for the shoreline management plan, are you generally consulted?
We do have input in that to some degree. But that's kind of Gunner's area,
Okay,
but yeah, go ahead, Gunner.
Yeah, no, I reviewed the last shoreline management plan that was put out here a few years ago. We do put input into it. And I was just going to add on Chance's comment that, you know, the county, a lot of what they're doing is they'll do their yearly ditch maintenance, and they've got not quite the system that we do, being a developed urban area. And the county does have some of those pockets of concentration, but not like the city of Bremerton.
thank you. Only two more questions. The source control inspector that you're proposing is, would do both businesses, largely restaurants, am I correct? That was the grease, fats, and oils presentation?
No, they will be
Correct.
looking at,
Sorry,
they'll be looking at places like transportation centers, so Kitsap
Habba dabba.
Transit, maintenance facilities, auto body shops, industrial users that generate moderate risk or hazardous material
Okay.
to
so,
make sure they're complying with the regulations.
okay, so city businesses and city facilities.
Yes.
Okay, final question. Is there a way, you know, I have this passion for reducing pollution or, you know, anything unwanted at source. Is there any way that code could be altered to require new developments to install and maintain stormwater retention, like via stormwater park or something else attractive that would add value to the development?
Sure. Yeah, right now we follow the Department of Ecology Stormwater Management Manual for Western Washington. And in that, all new developments that meet a 1 acre threshold are required to have certain amenities to treat and control runoff. And they're also, when they meet certain criteria, they're required to have treatment beyond just a, you know, basic stormwater pond. So it is, again, pretty prescriptive out of the manual that we follow and have adopted in our BMC. So, you know, in stormwater parks, I've heard you comment on that before. We are, as part of our SMAP, we are looking for areas where we could incorporate stormwater ponds, or not ponds, but parks. And with that, you know, those will be individual projects and based on the available real estate. You know, being the city, we just don't have the real estate, the green space to convert to a park, so to speak. But we do make every effort to consider that. Just like the Anderson Creek Park that we have, Lillian James Walker. That's really a nice facility for that neighborhood. You know, it's really an upgrade.
Okay, can I get details on all the rest of my 17 questions by reading the new Stormwater Comprehensive Plan?
I bet you will.
Thank you, all done.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Jeff.
All right, cool. Thanks, Chance. A couple quick ones. Make sure I got it right. The last time this was done, like around 2016, in step with the last comprehensive plan update. Like, are they always going hand in hand or not?
No, we failed that test completely. Last comp plan update was 2008
For the sewer component.
for the stormwater comprehensive plan.
Stormwater, thank you.
Yes.
Stormwater. Okay, so it's been 14 years. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. So it's not.
It's overdue.
Okay. Cool. But this will be basically a subsection in the 2022 comprehensive plan.
Yes.
Or it can be referenced separate. Okay, so it's actually going in there. Okay. So I'm guessing for the growth rate you're talking about, it's gonna use the same numbers as the 2044 projections, but obviously only up until 2027, or it's the same population growth assumptions.
We are trying to align with that. Yes.
Okay, that's good. Slightly random question: if there is a rate hike needed, I'm guessing if the comprehensive plan, if the stormwater plan comes back and says, "Man, we have to increase rates," is that something that can be done kind of gradually over time, or Is it generally like, here's the new rate as it steps up?
I think, go ahead, Tom. This is his area.
Yeah.
It's going to be evaluated by FCS Group, and I mean, they're doing it right now. And so it would come with an implementation plan with the 2023 budget. Actually,
Okay.
it'd come ahead of the 2023 budget, but it'd be implemented with the 2023 budget.
Okay, so they have to look at it and see what's feasible. Okay.
Yeah.
And it gets evaluated every year. Like they create a dashboard and then we look forward at our capital improvement plan and what's needed for O&M and our costs and our revenue. And then every year we sort of vet, they'll do a 6-year projection, but then every year we basically vet it and bring whatever comes out of that process for the budget forward as a recommendation for a rate increase.
Okay, I should pay closer attention to my bill year to year. Perfect. What was the last one I had? Oh yeah, on the inspection, is that something new that's starting, or is that a continuation or slightly increasing?
It's new.
Okay.
Department of Ecology provided a lot of SIC codes that meet the criteria for businesses that need to be inspected for source control, essentially point source pollution prevention. Now, Kitsap Health used to do individual facility inspections for moderate waste generators, but they've quit doing that and transferred that load to us as well. So they're going to fall into the same deal. What we want to do is reduce the number of inspections that we do on these individual properties. Just so, you know, if we can do the fats, oils, and grease at the same time, great. If we can do the stormwater private system inspection at the same time, cool. You know, it just reduces our interface and their time that they have to spend with us to make sure we're all on the same page.
No, makes sense. Cool, that's all I got. I like the idea of the public input, obviously, but you know, if it's specific asks for the public on what they can comment on, or if there's any options, and then if we have time to amend it based on that input. But otherwise, thanks for the heads up. Looks good.
Thank you.
So I think we have our consultant here. Phil, did you help draft or were the main author of the comprehensive plan update?
Yes, I was. I worked with Chance and Sarah to write it up.
Do you have any comments for the council members here on the process or anything to look for?
No, I don't really have anything to add. The Chance didn't summarize, I think, pretty concisely.
Okay. Chance, thank you. Chance, the question I have, it's interesting, the 600 or the 800 plus businesses that are going to be inspected. I don't have a problem with that per se, but what's the statutory authority that allows the city to do this? In other words, is it at the business license requirement that allows on-site inspection for that, or how's that been worked out? Is there a new RCW?
I think there is an RCW that supports the stormwater permit. You know, I'd have to look into that in a little more detail. I don't have anything else top of my head. I know that it's in the permit. It's required of us. We are going to amend our BMC, which is going to also provide part of what you're asking.
Okay, that's what I was getting at, because if it's not in our BMC now, it probably isn't, because my understanding is you're not requiring this. If it's not covered under RCW, then we'll have to do some housekeeping and put it in our BMC, all businesses. Then the next question is, do you think it's going to trickle down and we're going to look at all residents and looking at downspouts? I know, now I'm going back in time here, about 20 years ago, there's this big push on disconnecting our downspouts so they didn't go into the drains and all that stuff. Any comments on that?
It's not, this is going to be very focused on the commercial pollution, you know, it's site specific pollution prevention, education and assistance to help, you know, help reduce our pollutant load and ultimately reduce what we have to treat and maintain. You know, if we treat something, it leaves something, that means we have to get it out of our treatment systems. So No, I won't get into that point. I still work with the downspout disconnections. And I work with property owners, and it's about stormwater getting into the sanitary sewer and
Yeah.
causing overflows. So, yeah, that's something I still do.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you for the comprehensive update on the comprehensive plan update.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Next up on is item 2, the 2022 to 2024 pavement marking contract. I was just thinking, we just did the 3-year chip seal contract. Now we're doing pavement marking. So Dave Carter, go ahead.
Dave just texted me. He dropped off. He's trying to log back in. So
Okay, we'll move on to the next item if you
good,
want.
because it'd be better if I didn't try to pinch hit for him on that one.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
So we'll move on to 3 and go back to 2 when Dave shows up. I see Eric just popped in. Update on the applying for coverage under the Washington Department of Ecology's biosolids general permit. Eric Burris, go ahead.
So good afternoon. Just a quick deal here. I wanted to bring to the Public Works Committee a current housekeeping issue. The new statewide general permit for biosolids management was issued by the Department of Ecology on June 15th, 2022. I've been working diligently with various City of Bremerton staff to fill out the application and put together all the supplemental information that is required along with the application. Once all the proper forms are filled out and all the supplemental information is gathered, the application and all of that will be routed to the mayor for signature and then submitted to Ecology. This will be the start of the new 5-year permit cycle for the biosolids permit. So just kind of an update on that. That's all I've got.
Any questions from the committee members? You were out there last week looking at biosolids in the real time. Okay, thank you, Eric.
All right, thank you.
Next item up is looking for Dave. Oh,
He's back. He's here.
oh, he is. There he is. Okay, we'll go back to item 2. The 2022 to 24 pavement marking contract. Mr. Carter, go ahead.
Good afternoon, council members. Sorry about that. I had a brief interruption there. So I'm bringing forth a 20 unit price contract for citywide pavement markings. It'll be a 2022 through 2024 contract with the possibility of a 4th year. The summary is the city annually programs pavement markings and bids the work each year. However, for 2022, we have prepared a unit price contract following RCW 35.22.620. Using this approach, we'll award a 3-year contract that establishes the unit price of each of the materials to be incorporated into the work, and will execute annual task or work orders that define the road to be preserved or remarked. The 2022 work is generally located within West Bremerton. Well, that's not exactly true, but currently the contract is out to bid, and we will be opening bids on the 23rd of this month. This project is included in the Transportation Capital Projects Fund, and that budget is not exactly accurate. It's a little lower than that. And the contract that we currently have out to bid, due to the fact that the State Department of Transportation marked the Warren Avenue Bridge, we're going to write an addendum to remove that from the current year contract. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Dave. I take it this is going to be on next week's study session, then the actual contract after it's opened. The bidding.
Well, the 20th, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
It'll be on the study session on the 24th.
And that's where we'll see all the numbers and the dollar costs and all that stuff.
That's correct.
Okay, Anna, go ahead, please.
Not to worry. It's too hot to worry. Thanks. Dave, first thing, I really like this thing that you guys are doing with the 3-year unit price contract. I just like that a whole real lot. It seems like it's money saving, and it's also gonna be a core of kind of loyal people, you know, who will have some institutional memory of the project. Is this something that the city used to have its own truck and crew to do this, or has it always been contract?
It's always been contracted, and for several years, it could have been more than several. Kitsap County would come do all of our long line striping. They did it at a very reduced price. We're generally paying about 3 times what we used to pay Kitsap County for our long line striping. Back in the day when we had a full traffic maintenance division, we would do our own hot applied markings and our raised pavement markers. But we haven't been able to do that for several years, so we contract that out now.
I know it's the middle of the construction season, but is there are there figures lying around for how it would work for us to have staff and a vehicle to do this ourselves now that the price has tripled?
We haven't put those numbers together. I do know that a dedicated painting truck, something that would last for several years, is not cheap. That's a significant purchase.
We'd need staff to support that as well, for sure. And you know, it wasn't our choice that we stopped working with Kitsap County. We really liked it. It was a risk management decision on the part of Kitsap County. So we were sad to see that go.
Is it inappropriate language to say dang about that? No, that's
We've said worse.
okay.
So.
Well, dang. My final question is, do you have the streets that are marked for inclusion on a map anywhere? Is that something we could get down the line before next Wednesday?
Yes, I thought I included it with the agenda bill.
David, they haven't seen the agenda bill yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an
sorry.
attachment. It's an attachment to the agenda bill.
Yeah.
It will clearly identify it, but it's just the West Bremerton primarily, I believe. And you know, functionally classified roads, half dozen functionally classified roads in West Bremerton.
Yeah, they're mainly arterials that we have in the data set this year in the project that currently don't have or are missing quite a bit of their channelization as it is. So it's a housekeeping item to go back into maintain those pavement markings.
Great. Is there an ETA for us getting that map?
Well, it's in the agenda bill, and the agenda bill will be posted, I think, after council this week, I believe. I'm not sure when that comes out, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jeff.
Sounds good. Yeah, it'll be good to look at that map as well. For the 3-year contract, so if it all goes smoothly, it would go under contract in the fall here, close to winter for 2022.
Yeah, hopefully we can squeeze it in this fall.
Okay.
It's going to be a pretty short window, but that is our plan, is to squeeze those pavement markings in before the rains hit.
Okay, makes sense. And then is it till end of calendar year 2024 that the end date is for?
Yes.
Okay, so it's okay.
We
so
actually
like
have the ability to do
years in a couple months. Okay.
We have the ability to do a 1-year extension on that, which is actually pretty great, really. I'm trying to open up the agenda bill, and here we go. I'm opening it right now. Just go ahead and share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
So I guess, Lower Wheaton Way here and a little bit of Lebo. Bridge, Dave spoke about the bridge, 6th, Callow, and 11th and Park.
All those roads have significant markings.
And it's freshening existing markings, right? Is that fair?
That's fair.
That's correct.
Yeah.
If the 6th Street rechannelization goes through, would this be included in it?
So, so this contract is maintaining what's out there already. And for that particular segment, the reason why it's in there is because we have lane lines in there that have no RPMs on them whatsoever right now. It's really lacking the pavement markings out there. And we have a project to repave that segment of 6th Street, but that's scheduled for the year after next. So it's still a ways off right now. And that's just to mill and fill that segment of street. And then there's going to be a rechannelization project at some point after that. Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, RPMs are raised pavement markings. They're the little dome shaped ceramic or plastic or whatever they are. Right. And then the implementation of the rechannelization it's likely going to end up being a project unto itself because it's actually very expensive. And then this annual contract would end up freshening that, in time after it's implemented.
Okay, that makes sense. So there's really separate. Okay.
At some point in the future. I mean, we're a couple of years away from that. So.
Right, that's my check. Okay. All right, so end of 2024. So sorry, back to my original question, make sure I had that straight. So 3-year contract, but really being technical 2 years and a couple months with a 1-year optional extension.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Awesome. That's all I got. Thanks, y'all.
Anna?
Thanks, Eric. Real quick one. So this is the entirety of the 150K to be spent on pavement markings, this map that we're looking at?
Correct.
Thank you.
Plus some additional funds in the traffic safety part of the transportation capital funds.
Thank you. Thanks, Eric.
Sure. RPMs also known as turtles, correct, guys? Yeah, that's what I thought. All right. We'll look forward to seeing this at next study session and see what the bid looks like. Next item up. Thank you, Dave. Next item up is the Warren Avenue Bridge non-motorized alternatives being evaluated. We got Shane and Vicky. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'd like to have Vicky start off on this. Vicky, if you would.
Thank you, Shane. Good evening, everyone. So I was asked to do just a brief overview of the process and where we are on looking at the alternatives for the Warren Avenue Bridge. So obviously the city with our design consultant, which is SCJ, we are currently reviewing alternatives for the bridge that range from 8 feet to 16 feet wide. And these are pedestrian, bicycle path, shared use path, sidewalk, all options are being included, or nomenclature that everyone's heard of that we're looking at. And I would also like for council to know that we are also including the West Sound Cycle Club option is being evaluated. It's part of that 8 to 16 foot width that we're looking at with all of the alternatives that we have. So, and I just want to remind everybody what our project constraints are. The structural constraint for this project is not to increase the additional weight on the bridge by more than 10%, as that will kick us into seismic upgrades, which are very expensive, and we don't want to go there. Maintenance by WSDOT. The bridge will always be maintained by WSDOT. And so we're looking at existing U-bit, and we're also looking at options that would include the city of Bremerton buying a new U-bit in order to have some of the wider options. And then just a reminder too, we have slated for construction is $25 million. And I wanted to briefly talk to you about what our next steps are in our process. I believe today a doodle poll went out. We're trying to get our second stakeholder meeting set up, and we're looking for, I believe it was 2 weeks in September that we were looking to get our next stakeholder meeting set up. Then after that, we will have a public open house. Then we'll have another stakeholder meeting. So in our scope of work, we currently have 2 more additional stakeholder meetings that we can have, and we have 2 more additional open houses that we may have if needed. Then we plan to go to Public Works Committee in November. Our plan is to present to council in December, and we would like to start design of the bridge preferred alternative in January of 2023. And I would love to take some questions. Shane, do you got anything you want to add before we do our questions?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add, Vicky, is that, you know, regarding a U-bit, so the U-bit is an underbridge inspection truck, basically is what it is. And it allows the state to get up underneath a bridge to inspect the underbridge elements. And the state has a U-bit in their inventory. But that current the issue that we've had on this particular bridge and widening it out is that their current U-bit in their inventory only spans a certain amount of distance over a sidewalk width, and that clear width is 8 feet on the bridge. And so so originally going into this with the state was comfortable with using their current U-bit in their inventory, but based off from current conversations with the state is under you know, the impression that if we build out a sidewalk wider than that 8 feet, that would require a different U-bit or a more expensive U-bit, one not in their inventory. Then they've suggested that the city would be on the hook for paying for that. But I just want to make clear that that's not something that we've agreed to. That's something that the state is kind of telling us at this point. But I just want to make that clear that that's still a discussion item, but one that is going to come up pretty quickly on this project. Tom?
I just want to real clear. So the bracket of the widths that we're looking at are, you said 8 through 16. I just want to be clear that means 8-foot options both sides, 10-foot options both sides, 12, like every 2 feet, right? 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So those are the options. And then you end up with different issues that come up with those options, like having to purchase a U-bit or whatever, but it'll just be one factor that's considered in identifying, you know, the preferred alternative.
Right. And we're not at the point where we have finalized conclusions over what we've analyzed so far. We're still working through the project, and we still have quite a ways to go on the alternatives and evaluating them, as well as getting input from our stakeholder groups and the public. So we haven't even reached that point yet. So there's still a fair amount of work for us to do, and we're still working on the conclusions for what we're evaluating.
Okay, thanks, Jack.
Yeah, I got some questions here, as y'all know, from some emails back and forth. So I think one thing that would be really helpful is when we're talking about widths, just to make sure we're on the same page on exactly what's being defined. So bear with me, but if I hold up this picture, is the background going to blur it? Of course it will. Hold on 1 second. Let's unblur that background. Okay, you can see my office that's still not unpacked. So if I look at like the Warren Bridge and I stick the tape measure across from one side to the other, right? One across the whole paved width. Let's just get the right term to describe that. I'd call that paved, but you all agree it's the same thing as clear width?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
if I say paved and clear are the same thing when we're talking about a bridge design.
Yeah, we typically couch it as a clear width is what we couch it as. And that's the width from inside of barrier to inside of barrier, right? Is what that is, which is, I believe, what you showed in that photograph.
Okay, perfect. Yeah,
Yes.
just going from, I can stick my foot all the way to one side up another. Okay. So that is, I'll just call that paved going forward, but we know that's also for a bridge, the same thing as clear. Okay, and then there's been a lot of interchange on sidewalk versus shared use path. and I want to make sure we're all thinking about the same thing there. Is there any difference between what you call a sidewalk and a shared use path, aside from just that paved width?
Yes, there is. Well, there's a clear definition of a shared use path. So let me just step back a little bit. This is a WashDOT bridge, and WashDOT will have they're going to have quite a bit of input into what we build out here for this bridge, and they have a set of design criteria that they use when they design their projects, and a shared use path has a defined definition to it as opposed to a sidewalk. So when you look up shared use path in WashDOT's design manual, then it's a shared use path to WashDOT is a 12-foot facility with 2 feet on either side. So in essence, it's 16 foot. That's what they call a shared use path. So, but the clear distance is 12 feet. But what they like to do is have 2 feet on either sides for shoulder. And because they don't want obstructions in those areas. So a sidewalk is a different terminology for WashDOT than a shared use path. And the sidewalk is typically from back a curb to where the end of the sidewalk is. It doesn't have the 2 foot on either side. So yeah, it is kind of confusing, but there is defined terminology in WashDOT world and design world for this.
So let's pause there. So when I look at the WashDOT shared use path manual, it has a statement that basically 10 feet paved is the minimum for a shared use path.
Yeah, and 12 feet is desirable.
Right.
Yeah.
So
what they do,
yeah.
Right. So what they do is they design to desirable. And then if you want to go something less than desirable, then you need a design deviation from their headquarters for accepting something less, and you have to justify it. So that's a process that they go through. And so when I was scoping out this project in last year, when after council got the received the option or the presentation from the West Sound Cycle Club, what I made sure to do was ensure that we were speaking on WashDOT terms with a shared use path, which had a 16-foot width, and that we were evaluating everything from the shared use path standard, which is what they would want to see, all the way down to what a minimum was of what we had in our feasibility study, which was conducted, I think Tom worked on it back in like 2016. Which is something that we already coordinated with them on. So we wanted to make sure that we covered all the options, that we're doing our due diligence to look at everything, not just the West Sound Cycle Club's option, although that's going to be studied underneath this, but everything, so that we had a good product for council and for the public. Right.
Absolutely. Just focusing on this sidewalk versus shared use, I think I'm still hearing a disconnect. When I look at the manual, it says 10 foot paved a minimum, 12 foot desired. But I think I keep hearing you say 16 foot is the minimum. And that's where I want to make sure we got that clear.
It says, I pulled it up. It says excluding shoulders. Right. So then you add the shoulders to that. A 12-foot shared use path would have 2 foot shoulders on both sides. Right.
But then it also says that bridges are typically always paved, and it has the word paved in there for the size. And there's other bridges across so WashDOT calls other bridges that are 12 and 14 foot paved, that calls them shared use paths. So I'm really confused how about if we just talk about the clear width? I think
that's
what I'm
clear with the paved width. So the alternatives that we're looking at are in 2 foot increments from 8 foot to 16 foot. I mean, that's what's included in the evaluation right now. And my understanding is the bike club had a proposal for 12-foot clear width, and then no improvements on one side, and then no improvements on the other.
And Tom, just to go a little bit further, it was 12 foot preferred, and then, well, it was 12 foot, but 14 foot preferred or desirable. So they actually gave 2 different clear widths in there that they wanted to look at. And so, so we scoped it up to look at everything, so we could look at all the options.
Okay, so I think there's still a disconnect on that. I would like to see something from WashDOT clear this up on what their manual says and what they're calling other bridges, where other bridges have a 12-foot clear distance and they call it a shared use path. So I think we need something to clear that up there, because what I'm reading and what I'm seeing elsewhere in the state is not, I don't think 16-foot clear is the minimum for a shared use path. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah, we're not taking that as a minimum.
Okay.
That is the maximum shared use path that they build. And so
Maximum, okay.
they say, yeah, and as a matter of fact, they actually do go down to 8 feet clear on a bridge if there are constraints. So there are levels of deviations that WashDOT has in their design process. They start out with a 16-foot, the 12-foot clear, and the 2 foot on either sides. And then what they do is if they have reasons to deviate from that to go to something like less, then they have an internal process to allow them to do that.
Okay,
And that, yeah.
So we can say if there's a 6-foot clear on a bridge, we call that a sidewalk. If it's a 12-foot clear, we can call that a shared use path. Are we all in agreement there?
I
No.
think so.
No.
I think it's just semantics.
Yeah, that's semantics. Yeah.
I think it's just semantics, honestly,
yeah.
because we're evaluating from 8 foot to 16 foot, and somewhere between 8 foot and 16 foot, we're going to go from feasible to infeasible, right? I mean, so that 16-foot width, I think when we get the report, we're going to find that that's not feasible. It's we wouldn't be able to afford it. WashDOT wouldn't.
Yeah, that's getting ahead of the cards. Okay.
So I think it's just semantics. So if we just talk about clear widths, I think that might be helpful for the discussion going forward.
Why don't we table that on the sidewalk for shared use? I think because it seems to be used interchangeably in a lot of different documents as I'm going through with different widths. Again, something that I think we should really get cleared up going forward, because there is a little bit of, can you ride a bike on a sidewalk or not, versus shared use path, right? That it is, I think it is important. But moving forward, so of the alternatives being considered, is there a west side only 12-foot clear path alternative?
Yes.
Yes, okay. That's great. So 12-foot clear west side only is one of the alternatives.
Yes, and 14. We're doing a 12 and a 14, just like the West Sound Cycle Club asked, just on one side.
Okay, that is fantastic.
And let me be clear, it's the west side.
Right, on the west side, good, okay. So west side, both a 12-foot and a 14-foot clear / paved with an alternative for each. And then for those two, as part of those alternatives, does that include the tunnel connection on the south side of the Warren Bridge?
We are looking at that. Yes, we are.
Okay, so
and remember, it's from a high level. It's from a high level that we're looking at it. But the point of why we're looking at two from high levels, put it in the cost estimate so we can find what's in our budget. But yes, we are definitely looking at the tunnel.
Okay, the tunnel is included in those two alternatives. Okay. Perfect. And then I'm guessing is it preliminary to ask for any potential cost on that tunnel?
Preliminary, yes.
Preliminary.
Too
Okay.
preliminary. We're getting there.
Okay, yeah, no, it makes sense. I just wanted to see, because I noted that in the SR 303 corridor project priority list, the tunnel's in there, but it's looped in, it's combined with a bunch of other projects across the county. So it doesn't look like there's ever been an assessment for how much that tunnel costs. I know, like, I looked at the Paulsville No Roll, that is very similar. It's about $2 million. So I just wanted to ask.
We
that
will
question.
definitely have a line item, again, a high level estimate, but we'll have a line item for what we think that tunnel will cost.
Okay, fantastic. And then on I think the last thing I have then is on the U-bits themselves. Let's go back to the width. So you're saying 8-foot clear is the biggest that the standard U-bits that WashDOT currently would be able to give to us, or WashDOT currently has U-bits that they're willing to use for us that can do 8-foot clear.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And I know you mentioned buying. Is it also looking at renting them? Because I know other bridges in the area, they've rented them to come in for inspection.
I don't know, Vicky, did you guys talk about renting when you had your conversation with WashDOT?
No, and I gotta be honest, I hadn't thought about that, and I would think it's something we could bring up and see what they think about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how available a bigger U-bit is to rent.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
such a specialty piece of
It is, yeah.
Yeah, that's.
I'll ask the
surprised.
But
question.
we can run that with WashDOT and just make sure we cover that base, for sure.
All right, thanks for asking. Because I think I came across that had been done for some other bridges in the state. And then I think I was reading somewhere too that WashDOT might be considering drones to inspect in the future. So and I think that came up at another meeting. I don't know if that's if it's worth asking them as well. I think that would be good to know, just in case that is something that they have on the near horizon.
We have talked to them about that as an option, and they are not receptive to that at this point in time.
And they're also not receptive to rope teams either. So if the width is too wide and they can't find a U-bit or some other way to inspect the bridge elements, then having a rope team go through and inspect is not something that they would want to do as well. So,
and then with the 8-foot maximum for the current U-bits available, is that for both sides? Because I remember at some point there's this discussion, I think if I remember right, that could have a 12-foot clear on one side, and if there's nothing on the other, you could use that normally 8-foot maximum U-bit to inspect both sides as you need.
Vicky, do you want to tackle that one?
When you say there's nothing on one side, you mean you would remove the sidewalk on one side completely and not have a sidewalk?
Yeah, that's the alternative. I think we just agreed is being discussed.
The bike club's alternative was leave the sidewalk on the east side alone, which means you still have a 4-foot width and then a 12-foot clear, just to be clear, on the west side. And that required the larger U-bit. I do not believe we're evaluating a removal of sidewalk to have a reduced width on the east side or either side.
That is correct, Ned. We are not looking at that. And there's reasons for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are reasons for that, I think.
There is. I can go into it if you want to know.
As long as they're presented, I think that'll be good, just because I know there'll be questions on that. Okay, so you're saying the U-bit can't get over 12. Okay. And then, yeah, I think just to wrap that up on the U-bit, I still got a lot of questions in my mind of all these other bridges across the state that definitely have bigger than an 8-foot clear side path. I know some of them are concrete bridges and not steel, and they have different inspection requirements.
Yeah.
But
and
I think that's fundamental. I think that's the steel members, they have to inspect that close. They have to be within arm's length of every steel member. So on the concrete sections, I don't know that that's a constraint. But for the steel section, it's definitely the driver.
Okay. Yeah, just if it ultimately comes down, at the end of the day that we're fundamentally constrained by the available U-bits, it would think it'd be really good to have a clear examples and to really show that is 100% the case. I think that's going to be really important for the public. And then so then right now, what size U-bit is used to inspect the bridge currently? Is it that same 8-foot maximum U-bit?
Yeah, good question.
My knowledge, it is.
Yeah. I know they have it in their inventory. I don't know what model it is or anything like that, but I can, we can look that up if you want us to.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'd be great to find out now. Just what's being used. Okay. Thank you all for walking through that. It just gets with the different definition. It gets I'm sorry, thought in my head. If they do both sides or one side right now, the current U-bit would be interesting to know. But yeah, it obviously gets complicated here. So I appreciate you slow walking through to make sure we're really.
And let me add that I think it is our intent that we want a facility that will accommodate cyclists as well as pedestrians. I think that is the intent of doing this analysis. I don't know if that helps or if that's what you're thinking by if we call it a sidewalk, does that mean no cyclist can be on it? And I'm not
No.
That is
sure.
part of my concern, because I
Sorry,
know
go
like
ahead,
the
Tom.
BMC allows bicyclists on sidewalks, but if that changes in the future, yeah.
It's gonna be a multi-use facility, right? You're
Yeah,
not gonna
yeah,
put
yeah,
bi-
yeah,
You're not
yeah.
gonna put bicycles out in the travel lane. That's not gonna happen. So the cyclists and pedestrians are both gonna be accommodated in the expanded facilities. You can call it a shared use path or a sidewalk, but that's the reality of how that use will function. And it'll be.
Thanks,
It's the
thanks,
use
Tom.
right now with the existing 3.5 foot wide path.
It is, and it's, and honestly,
Well-
I've kept my mouth shut. Well, I guess I haven't, but anyway, there's one comment that I really want to make is that, the option where you have a 12-foot sidewalk or shared use path on one side and then you leave the other side alone. It's like, it's unsafe. It's unsafe. The existing 3.5 foot wide sidewalk is unsafe. So I hate that personally. I just hate that alternative. So that's my opinion.
I would like you guys to know, I actually went out and I walked that bridge. I walked over and back and I had probably 4 cyclists have to come by and you have to suck yourself up against the railing there and hope a handlebar or something doesn't take you out. It's very, until you actually cross it yourself, you really don't know what you're missing.
Yeah, I've been across it a lot for sure. And I mean, the idea, right, would be with a tunnel, with everything funneled, with all the bike connections on the west side, you wouldn't have bicyclists using the east side anymore. So, yeah.
And the other thing to mention as well is we have some real constraints on this project, and we have a lot of permutations with the alternatives we're looking at, right? One side of the bridge versus the other, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, right? We're going through all of them to figure out what the best alternative is, but we have some real constraints. We have constraints with structural on this, with the weight of the bridge. We have that constraint with WashDOT. We have to keep underneath a certain weight. We have to be able to maintain it. That's a big thing with WashDOT. And then cost is a big thing as well. And then fitting the project into our local network with the bridge trail is also another big one, with safety. So there's a lot of constraints to this. And it's been taking us some time to get through all the alternatives and then to come up with what, to figure out what those constraints are, what our limitations are, to be able to come back to council and say, hey, with a straight face, these are all the alternatives we looked at, everything under the sun, guys. And these are the constraints. And hopefully we'll get to a point where we meet all the constraints and we have a good product at the end of it. But it's been taking us a little bit of time to do that. And we still have a fair amount of process and work to go to get that done. So
all good. No, absolutely appreciate it. There's a lot of factors. I'm not, pushing for any specific thing to be chosen at the end. I'm just making sure that all the options are on the table, and especially the options that were directed to be put on the table before, which it sounds like after this conversation, they are. So that is fantastic. Yeah. Sorry, Ned, you've had your hand up a long time. Oh, maybe it wasn't meant to be up.
I think Anna's hand is up, so go ahead.
Oh,
Ned, you've got more expertise than I by streets. So
Yeah,
did you have something you wanted to add
Well,
before I go?
basically all that conversation, like Jeff said something to the effect of, well, there's a difference whether bikes can use a sidewalk or not, right? So I was looking for clarity on that, but everyone else just jumped in without raising their hand. So I think it got resolved. But I was trying to, you said that as a really short comment, and it sounded like that was really the crux of the shared use path definition that you were trying to boil down. And like Vicky said, our intent is whatever we do, it's going to be accessible for bicyclists and peds, and it's going to have to accommodate both. So
okay,
that's all.
No, fantastic. Yeah, I just seen the use interchangeably. I wanted to make sure it was clear there was nothing else tied into those two terms. So perfect.
Okay, Anna.
Jeff, master researcher. So, okay, not too many questions here. If this is not opening up a can of worms, I hope, and if it is, let's just drop it. but the, the shared use pass, like here's 16 foot. Then you come in 2 foot on either side for your shoulder. And what's left is 12 foot, yeah?
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
so WashDOT, I'm just asking you to marvel with me at regulations. So WashDOT is requiring this for a shared use path, but if you go ahead and put one in, you have to pay for the special U-bit to inspect it. Is that correct?
I think we're still working on what widths that the new U-bit will be able to inspect. So we're still working on that. I think the early indication that we got, Vic, you can speak more to this because you're in the meeting with WashDOT maintenance, is that once you get to a 16-foot shared use path, I think they're saying that's kind of sort of an exclusive, or then they're saying that's an exclusive rope team that would need to be utilized in order to inspect that type of facility. I believe that's what you indicated.
correct.
Yeah. So
How very odd that WashDOT would say this is the desirable thing, but if you're going to put it in the desirable thing, we don't have the equipment to inspect it.
right. Well, we didn't know that when we scoped out the project. This is coming out just recently, as of I think the last month and a half. So we didn't know that when we scoped up the project, that was the case. So
Well,
I don't
Shane,
think
I get-
that's what WashDOT is saying. I don't think
Right.
WashDOT is saying, hey, we'd really like you to put 16 feet on the bridge, but if you do, you need a U-bit. I think it's just, that's the definition of a shared use path for them.
right.
And I think that
They're
that's more
looking for the
applicable.
sweet spot.
Wait,
To
it's
new
too many
design.
people.
We're
Sorry.
talking about like when you're doing a new design of a bridge, that's what you'd want to put in. Retrofitting is not, I don't know how common it is for us to go in and retrofit a bridge like this, trying to put a 16-foot path on the side of it.
So this is the constraint that we keep, that wasn't mentioned this month, which is the bridge is really not designed to, right, it's not a modern, it's not designed to bear a modern load.
It's an old bridge, to be honest with you.
It's a constraint. The structural capacity of the bridge is a constraint. And WashDOT isn't saying, hey, we want you to put in 16 feet. They're just saying, if you're going to call it a shared use path, this is what we define it as, right? So really,
Got it.
colors are going to be a big constraint. Like all of the estimates right now look pretty high. And maintenance is going to be a big constraint when you look at the U-bits that you need. And it's definitely going to be a constraint if they need a rope team, because WashDOT isn't going to approve that width that takes that. So it's sort of, there's the overall weight, there's how you maintain it, and there's dollars. And those things, we're trying to find the right thing that gives us the maximum width on one side or both sides that accommodates the safest path for everybody with those constraints. And it's, they kind of, they oppose each other sometimes a little bit. So it's a little complex, but we're working through it.
I'm really curious, how does anyone in the public work department retain hair? Like, don't you just want to be pulling your hair out often?
These are wigs.
I want Ned's wig. Let's swap wigs.
My wig's really coming in.
So I'm just here to say this is not a wig, because if I was to buy a wig, it wouldn't look anything like this. It'd be.
Tom got the short straw.
But maybe that's your nefarious plan, Tom. You won't go, obviously this couldn't be a wig because. I only have a couple more questions, and these are the things my constituents want to know. Way back in the before times, when there were no pandemics, this was under consideration by council, and one of the considerations that came up was that wheelchairs cannot pass each other on the existing sidewalks. So it's like if you're a wheelchair coming in one direction and you meet another wheelchair, you gotta, either, I don't know what alternative, there's no alternative. One of you has got to back up all the way. So just making sure that whatever we put in, 2 wheelchairs will be able to pass each other. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there's.
Final thing. Oh, I'm sorry. After you.
But yeah, I was gonna say, the current bridge right now doesn't meet ADA requirements for what we call a pedestrian access route, which is 4 feet clear. But every 200 feet, you need to have a 5-foot bump out for wheelchairs to pass. And this bridge, it doesn't meet that. It's a third of a mile long, and it doesn't meet ADA requirements, which is a big reason for why we're doing this. It's dangerous, and you know, WashDOT, you know, I don't mean to throw them under the bus or anything like that, but they had a rail project that they came through back in the early 2010s where they wanted to beef up the rail, and they ended up reducing the width even more as part of that project. And I don't know how they're able to do that, but it's been a big problem for us for a long time. But it does, my ADA coordinator hat's on. It doesn't meet ADA, and it scares me. It really does if something happens. So.
Okay, I've got 2 more questions, but I see,
Yep.
Tom, you've got your hand up.
Just a quick comment. I mean, I think we're doing a great job of evaluating all, you know, potential alternatives and even going beyond what's feasible into what's infeasible. So I think, you know, we bracketed this really well. We're giving this a good, hard, thorough look to see what's possible, right? I don't know that there's any alternative. Well, there isn't really any alternative that might exist that we're not evaluating on the bridge. I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, no, I get that. Although I gotta say, nobody seems to be looking into leasing a skyhook. So, you know, there's an omission right there. Okay, so this is another question that is big with my constituents. Are the lane widths are 11 foot now, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And you're not going to reduce them beyond 11 foot, right?
No, we're not.
No.
That's not the plan. We've I'm sorry.
I didn't realize I was interrupting you, Shane. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of history there. I'll just be real quick. 2 years ago, the state came through with a paver job, and we actually ended up the lane widths across the bridge were 12 feet, and we thought it would be a good idea to reduce the lane width to 11 feet to help calm traffic on the bridge. And what that did was create a wider shoulder, and I guess the jury's still out on whether or not that had any effect on speed. But just so you know, they used to be 12 feet, they're 11 now, and we're planning on keeping them at 11 feet. So.
Okay, I just really wanted to hear that for the record, because you have said that to council at least twice that I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
But it's misinformation that seems to have a really, really long half-life.
Right.
I have no more questions except to say, did you guys read the Kitsap Sun about the Navy team that roped down the flue to rescue someone who had fallen at the hotel? So just imagine like having the Navy rope team go to WashDOT and get certified to do the rope inspection. Now there is like a meeting of 2 giant bureaucracies that I would pay good money to watch. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, taking another swing at it.
15 more. One last comment, which was, I just kind of want to point out that in all the documents I read, I mean, the corridor study, the comp plan, the different presentations that I've been given, I don't think I've seen anybody ask for 16 feet clear, one-sided or two-sided. I don't think I've ever seen that requested or proposed. So if you're looking for alternatives to take off, I mean, that I don't think anyone would miss them, but I just wanted to point that out. I wasn't really clear why 16 foot got thrown in there. If it doesn't cost more to throw it in alongside the others, all right, but want to make that comment.
I think that was just the outside, like we were looking for the bracket, like the bookends of what we could do. And when you look at the WashDOT definition, if you want to call it a shared use path by their clear definition, by their optimum, it's 16 feet. But I think
still disagree there. I know.
I think 16 feet is going to be self-limiting. So probably not going to be the final recommendation, but we looked at it to bookend, like structurally, you want to look at the worst case and see if it works. And so it might work structurally, but it might not work from a cost perspective or maintenance perspective. So and to see what the limitations are.
And so I originally scoped this up to look at the 16 feet. And so I did that just so Ned, you know, for a couple different reasons. The first reason is because that's WashDOT definition. You know, I've worked with WashDOT headquarters for a long time, and shared use path means something to them. What we wanted to do is make sure that we did what council asked was, you know, do our due diligence on this project, right, with these alternatives. And so actually in talking with WashDOT Olympic Region Traffic Office, that's exactly what they said is, hey, you should be putting in a shared use path, which to them is 16 feet, including the 2-foot shoulders. So we wanted to make sure that we cut that out, that we had it evaluated so that we could say that at the end of the day, we looked at every alternative and we evaluated it, and it may be self-limiting, but we can say that with a straight face to anybody, and that's anybody from the public who asks about that as well. So, you know, we get, you know, many comments from the public on many different ideas, and you know, we've had comments about a new bridge. Why don't you build a new bridge, right? Why don't you build a, you know, actually we did have comments on the skyhook as well too, right? But at the end of the day, it gives us a more defensible project that we can say with a straight face in the mirror that, yeah, we looked at it and it's not feasible. Right.
Nope.
So
Perfect. It sounds like
yeah.
it's not coming at the expense of the smaller widths asked for. So that is
right. Right.
no harm, no foul. That's great to go out. All right. Thank
Mhm.
you, Shane.
Yeah.
All right, we've talked about this ad nauseum. However, I have a question. So what is the difference, if any, between a shared use path and a sidewalk material wise on this bridge? Any
Well,
difference?
so you want me to, so that's that very interesting ending question there, Eric. I'll tell you that we're not going to probably end up using concrete like what's there now. We are branching out, looking at some lighter type material. And there's 2 different ones that we're looking at, again, to try to stay underneath that no greater than 10% additional weight on that bridge. And so there's, Shane, what's the one, the RFP? Is it?
FRP.
That's the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
FRP. Fiberglass
guys might have-
reinforced.
oh, I'm sorry, say it again.
Fiberglass reinforced
That's the one.
Plastic.
So it's it.
plastic.
Yeah, so it's like a plastic. They put it on with some grit on the top of it too. It's very lightweight. It's approved by WashDOT. What's the bridge, Shane? There was a bridge that they used it on. The structural engineer was telling us about another WashDOT bridge had been used on.
Well, they just recently approved it for an application down on Bay Bridge Island for I think it's a PED bridge is what they included. They weren't clear. Our structural engineer wasn't clear about which one it was. We thought it was the Agate Pass Bridge, but then thought it was probably the one down at the ferry terminal that they're working on. And I was down there the other day, and that seems to be what they're working on because it's under construction right now. So.
Oh, but they didn't have the surface done yet to check it out, Shane.
No.
But it's a lighter weight type material that has it has a type of grit on the top to give traction. And there's another lighter weight type of panels, if you will, that we're looking at. They're a corrugated panel with some of the same kind of grit stuff. So there's a maintenance aspect to this too, using lighter weight material. And we haven't nailed that down. We're looking at 2 different options at this point. We've ran them by WashDOT to get their approval. We've gotten approval to use them, but we haven't figured out exactly which one of those we're going to go with. So I don't think you're going to see concrete. In fact, I'm pretty sure you won't.
Okay, thank you for that. You probably can see the gears inside my head working and why I'm asking this question. And that is, if there is no difference, we allow bicyclists and pedestrians on a sidewalk, but a shared use path by definition has to have 2 foot extra on each side. Why don't we call it a sidewalk, and then you can get a 12-foot section in without making it 16 feet and not being able to be built? That's just a simple observation from someone that doesn't know what they're talking about. But
Well, and
yeah,
it's my opinion. So WashDOT, to me, it's like they draw lines and say, this is what our definition is. And it's never one size fits all. So there's always a deviation process to deviate from that. So that may be their standard, what it says in their design manual. but that's, I mean, and we're gonna look at it again, because that I think is our limiting width is the 16 foot. But I don't think that's what they expect us to do.
So another comment on that, shared use path with WashDOT is often off roadway. It has horizontal and vertical control requirements for it, as opposed to a sidewalk.
You're fading in
It's-
and out, Shane.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. A shared use path with WashDOT has horizontal and vertical control requirements to it, like we would basically design a roadway, right? And it's typically not on the side of a road like a sidewalk is. So that's why they separated into a different, definition for what they look at. And I think to the layperson who doesn't understand that, who isn't in the WashDOT design manual, I think you'll probably say, hey, what's the difference? Well, it's a big thing to WashDOT because there's different design requirements for designing a shared use path as opposed to a sidewalk. So, but it's something that there's been, a lot of, I'd say, different definitions that people use for a sidewalk and shared use path and use it interchangeably. And we've done that in the past in our reports, but with WashDOT, it means something. So we're trying to make sure that we're, because it's their bridge, that we're keeping with the terminology that they use to make everything simple for everybody, including us. So, but I know Ned's laughing and it's not seeming
Well,
like it's that
so
way.
I think we're really, again, it's not like the shared use path is going to drive the decision. What's going to drive
Mm-mm.
is, like Vicky was just describing, 2 lightweight materials to design. The lighter we build, the farther we cantilever, the wider the path, right? That's kind of what we're looking at. And there's going to be cost constraints. And while the traffic office may have said, hey, you should be looking at a shared use path, their maintenance group is like, hey, that's rope work. We're not doing that, right? We can't do a 16 foot. So we get conflicting perspectives depending on who you talk to, their structural group, their traffic group, right? Their maintenance group. I think what's really going to drive this is there's going to be some sweet spot where we, get as close as we can to the budget with the widest paths we can get on one or both sides of the bridge. And I think it's going to become clear what we can afford and what our best solution is. And it's really going to have nothing to do with whether it's called a shared use path or not, I don't think. It's
Right.
that's just what we're trying to sort through right now to meet WashDOT's request. So.
No worries. I just thought I'd throw that out there. You guys are all smarter than I am on this subject, at least. And I just want to throw out, there's nothing wrong with thinking outside the box. If you want to get a project done, call it something else, as long as it's still safe and meets what you want. I think it's pretty clear the council was excited about the 12-foot path. So I'm just suggesting try to look at things from different angles to see if you can get it done. Of course, this is open to the public process, but I think you see enough interest from 3 council members here that we really liked that idea. So I think you got the message, and we'll let it go with that. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to go with the pavement preservation street selection process. And this is a joint discussion. Before we get into the presentation, Anna, you were talking about that, talked about it a couple times. You talked about last week, and I wanted to say something, but it was kind of off subject. So having been through this discussion many times, I will tell you that it's all about bang for the buck. And you want to preserve the streets that are degrading a little. You want to keep them really high so they don't deteriorate all the way down to the bottom, where the chances of getting fixed are almost nil. So that's the layman's answer to that. But I'm going to let you have the floor. You had the questions. And then I think Tom had said in the email that was sent out yesterday or today that he's not prepared to go full out on the street discussion, but I think he's ready to answer, in his career, so to speak, or ready to answer your questions. So go ahead.
Me? I go ahead?
Yes, Anna, you had questions.
I do. So, thank you. So yes, I do understand that if one has the extremely desirable streets that many other districts possess, where they are in excellent or very good condition, that yes, like the ideal situation is that you think about the health of the street. And I think the 2018 pavement analysis gives it like you want to work on like a 20-year cycle. Am I correct so far? More or less, you know, like you, in order, like you have a great street, you know, you only have to go back every 20 years if you carefully preserve it. Whereas what we have in my district and all over Bremerton, but you know, I'm partial, is we have a lot of streets that are in fair condition. And I think I'm thinking specifically about East Finney Ridge and Callow between 15th and 24th. So one of the questions I had is, what's the plan for that? You know, what's our plan for doing that? Are we going to wait for, because as you guys have all, as Public Works have explained to me very, very patiently, thank you. Chip sealing a road, that's X. You know, it's an X cost. It's in the like tens of thousands, more or less. But building an entire new road, you know, taking out the old one, basically putting in a new one, complying with ADA requirements for curbs and curb cuts, is like at least 10 times as much. So in polite language, a lot. So I am just wondering if there's something that can be done, because here's what I'm thinking about. East Finney Ridge Drive is a slippery street and it's in mediocre condition in the best patches. Chip sealing, I understand, adds a little traction. That would be pleasant, you know, in the interest of people not getting dead or hurt while driving down East Finney Bay Ridge. But you guys have had all of my questions. So I think the best thing at this point is for me to stop talking and listen to you explain it. Is that okay?
Sure. Tom, take it away.
Okay. So I'll take a stab at starting, and I've got a copy. Let me just share a couple. This is a excerpt from the, actually I've got the IMS study up. And so the IMS study, it's identifying, you know, the pavement rehabilitation metric that's recommended in the study. And this right here, it looks to me like it's chip seal, because you've got a PMI, a pavement index of about 85 down to about 60. And what happens is you have this degradation curve. So if you do nothing, the pavement condition just continues to degrade, and it gets out steeper and steeper until you get down here to like failed condition. And so if you come in and you treat the pavement with chip seal, what you can do is you can push the condition index back up and really preserve the pavement in the long term. Right. Well, this is chip seal, and chip seal is only appropriate for certain conditions of pavement. And it's not failed pavement. I provided the excerpt from the presentation that I did, you know, quite a few years ago. And again, those costs need to be updated. But you can see from the information that we had there, and I got to tell you, we were a little optimistic in identifying the cost of sidewalk work in that. So I think that those reconstruction costs are going to get a lot more expensive when we update those figures, because concrete is turning out to be even more expensive than what we thought it was going to be 5 years ago. So the contract they have before you, we get a lot of bang for the buck with chip seal. And when we first started going down the path of implementing the chip seal program on the streets that are appropriate to use chip seal. I think that the dollar value that we settled on was $500,000. And we said, if we spend $500,000 every year, that is a sustainable program to treat all of those roads into the future that can be treated, maintained with chip seal. Well, now we're up to $650,000 with that same goal in mind. That is treating all of the appropriate roads kind of with an ongoing program. And you're asking the question about what about the roads that are in failed condition? What about the roads that, no, that's not what you're asking. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you then.
Yeah, I don't think we have any, I haven't seen roads that are failed. These are roads that are in marginal to poor condition.
Be a different treatment method. And once you get into the point of an overlay for a roadway, that triggers ADA upgrades, which are very expensive. And you know, I can't remember what kind of percentage cost it increases roads by, but you know, like a road like Belfair Valley Road, there's no cost increase for ADA compliance because there's no ADA ramps out there to upgrade. But if you take a look at a city street like a Perry Avenue or any of our other streets, I don't know, maybe doubles the cost. Maybe, I'm not sure. It's going to add a significant cost. Shane, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Tom, I mean, just to give you a magnitude of cost, Dave Carter just recently figured out how much it takes for him to put in programs.
You're fading in. You got to lean forward.
Sorry. Okay, so Dave Carter just went through an exercise. Dave is putting in curb ramps for the city right now as part of the curb ramp and sidewalk program, and his crews, which are about a third of a contractor's crew in general, you can put them in for about 10 grand. I think is about approximately what they put them in with per ramp, right? That's per ramp. So, if you going down a roadway in the city that has curb ramps on each block, then you can just, the costs are going to exponentially increase as opposed to what Tom was saying for a street that doesn't have any curb ramps or any sidewalk, then yeah, your cost will be less, but it all depends on the street really that we're looking at. But it's expensive to put in curb ramps for us.
So again, really, this contract is chip seal contract addressing those roads that are appropriate to address with chip seal. That's what this is all about. This one agenda bill is all about.
Okay, Anna.
Thanks. Thank you, Tom. Fortunately, I've had I haven't been working that hard, so I've had a chance to read all of these things that you sent me, and I have absorbed that. But here, I guess my question is, I'm looking at the 19th to 20th Rainier Taft U shape in the right near that Walker Park, is it? That little place with the amphitheater and the water facility building at the end of Bloomington there, where you guys are putting in sidewalk on 19th from Olympic to Bloomington. So I'm trying to figure out why waterfront property where the streets are marked as being in very good condition is being selected as opposed to other streets that, I'm not even talking about my streets my district streets that are in marginal and fair condition, but there are other streets that are steep and get a lot of use. Here, we're basically talking about a cul-de-sac. I'm trying to understand why these streets were chosen. So that was my question, specifically because I'm not fathoming it. And I can't explain it to my constituents if I can't understand it.
Well, let me make a couple comments, and I'm going to kick it to the person here that understands it a lot better than I do, which is Shane, and actually Vicky too. But so the IMS data is one data point that's used to identify streets, and then engineering will take that information and evaluate in the field and identify, which streets are appropriate to treat and which are not appropriate to treat, and then try to prioritize as well. And I guess you're looking at, the plans for 1 year of a program that we plan on continuing kind of in perpetuity. So just because, a specific street isn't included in the plan for year 1 doesn't mean that it's not going to get treated in year 3 or year 4 or year 6. So as far as prioritization, how are these streets selected? Shane, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I mean, in 2017, we had IMS come through. They did our roadway condition for the entire city. But with that scope, with what they provided us was a 5-year pavement management plan that goes through and prioritizes the streets for work. And their prioritization takes into account the need year, which is basically the year at which you need to do work on the street to avoid having to get down into a more expensive treatment option. It takes a look at the pavement condition. It takes a look at the strength of the subgrade and the strength of the pavement section, and then also takes a look at the functional class of the roadway and also the pavement type. So pavement type being asphalt versus concrete. And in consultation with our consultant, we ended up, they have certain, they have certain criteria for what you weight and what you don't. And what we ended up doing was we ended up changing the functional class to be less of a weight of criteria and put more of an emphasis on residential streets and with our pavement management analysis with them. And that was at the time 4 years ago when we put it together with them. There's a big emphasis on council's part by looking at doing more work on residential streets. So that's why we did that. And then the rest of the priorities or priority matrix, those items are basically at the consultant's recommendation for our particular network for Bremerton. So what that does is that the analysis that we have is a big Excel spreadsheet with lots of macros and formulas and this and that, and it goes through and analyzes each segment of a roadway in the city. It tests it with that priority and then comes up with the year of need for that roadway segment, and that's what our 5-year pavement management plan utilizes.
Okay. Everything in this project area it's all residential streets. There's no businesses, in this area, apart from that tiny little cluster on 15th Street, from Lafayette to Callow, like that one block. There's no business on this peninsula. So it's all residential streets. So I guess I'm asking again, like, why is it? It's a cul-de-sac, right? It goes up from 19th to 20th. It comes across at 20th. There's a spit street where Patty Lent's sister lives, where Taft continues up there. And both Rainier and Taft are marked very good. So I guess my constituents would want to know, why are we doing the very good street when we could be upgrading a good street? This has like what, 20, maybe 30 people who ever will go on Rainier and Taft from 19th and 20th, because it doesn't go anywhere. Whereas, sorry, after you, Shane, beg pardon.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't understand. So we have in the plan somewhere to do work on those streets.
That's correct. Yes, that was my question.
Okay, Dave, are you aware of any work on there? I'm not aware of any work on those streets that's planned.
They're
Those
on the
were
chip seal contract for 2022, are they not?
Yeah, those were added to the scope, Shane.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant the overlay, not the chip seal. Okay, yeah. So the chip seal part of it, and let me get to the 19th. I thought you were talking about 19th, which is a segment that we had in the plan over the past couple of years to work on from Snyder to Olympic. So that's the one I thought you were talking about. I
No, that would
apologize.
be dreaming. No, I'm
Yeah,
talking about Rainier from
Yes,
19th and
okay.
20th. Okay, sorry.
Right. So so that goes back to the prioritization, right? It looks at the year of need, right? At what point does this road fall into, do you need to do work so that you're not coming back the next year, the following year to reconstruct it with a higher payment, right? With a higher cost. And it also looks at the condition of the roadway. And for chip seal, the condition of the roadways, the pavement condition index we look at is up near 73. So chip seal has to be put on a roadway that is relatively, it's not crumbling. It doesn't have, pavement conditions that a chip seal, couldn't correct, right? Like, a lot of subgrade failures and that type of thing. We wouldn't put a chip seal on those types of roads. And so we typically put them on flatter roads, better conditioned roads, and roads that are in the process of oxidizing, but can still use this type of treatment. So that's why those roads were selected for the chip seal contract.
Can I just, so I think I hear the question. The question is, hey, it looks like you guys have much nicer roads that don't need chip seal and you're ignoring roads that do. And I just heard a constraint for grade, but if what you're saying is correct, maybe we need to look at just go back and do a review of the roads that are in this plan. And I misspoke last week. It wasn't Chris and Shane that put that together. It was Andrea Archer Parsons actually put together like a 5-year plan, and that's what Dave is working off of. But if your question is, hey, it looks like you have inappropriate chip seal roads when there's better roads to chip seal in this area, maybe, Shane, we need to just take a look at the map and the IMS data and see if that's actually an issue. And I don't know if it is or not.
I don't know if it is or not, honestly.
That Anna is asking. Am I right about that question?
It is, and I'm also concerned about, like, if Tom, can I be real brief? Okay, thanks. So if chip seal is only appropriate for roads with a flat grade, sorry, I'm going to stutter a little bit. You're doing Cambrian from 15th to 19th. That's a heck of a grade. You're doing Wyckoff, which is also a substantial grade. You're doing, I'm sorry, I'm squeaking, I beg your pardon. You're doing 15th Street to Naval, the hill that goes up the cemetery next to Naval. So I do very much like the idea of review, and now I will stop talking.
All right, I'm sorry, I misspoke on flatter grade. What I meant to say was flatter cross slopes with no rutting, right? Or any deficiencies that would make that chip seal a product that we wouldn't use there to address those types of issues, not flatter grade as in longitudinal grade. So I apologize about that. I misspoke there. Yeah.
Just, Tom.
Yeah, one quick comment. So, and I just to tag on to what Ned said. So when we established this scope, the amount of work that was there matched the budget based on what we thought the bids were going to come in at. And actually, we got a good bid on this project, a great bid. And so what that means is we're going to be able to do more work than is identified in this and still stay within budget. So so for this first year, we have the ability to add some scope. And so engineering is going to be looking at that with this contract. And then and again, it's a 3-year contract. Hopefully it's a 4-year contract, and so we'll be the nice thing about bidding it this way is that engineering and streets, Dave and Shane are going to be able to start looking at next year's scope, probably, through the slower winter months as well. So anyway.
Okay, Vicki.
And let me just add, we're getting ready to do a new 5-year plan as well. So and I can help take a look at some of those roads that Anna's talking about too, Shane. But definitely remember, we're getting ready to do a new 5-year plan as well.
Okay, Shane, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to compare different streets because we have over 1,700 blocks in the city, and our plan review looks at all of them. So I can't, it's hard for me to have an off the cuff conversation about why not this street as opposed to this street. But I can definitely look into that for you and provide a more robust answer for you. But I know what we did, and what we did was we took the results of the study. We looked at every single chip seal result that came out of it, which is 180 segments over the entire city. We had staff look at every single one of those segments to identify whether or not it was a good candidate and whether or not we could chip seal on those. And so we looked at every single one of them. And the plan that we have is based off from the recommendations in the report, the pavement management plan that we have. And that's what we based it on, with field verification, which took many, many days by its staff to do. And I think, and like to compare other streets and that type of thing, I apologize. I don't have the specific information for you there to say, okay, why not this street instead of this street? But I can definitely provide you that information. There's a reason why we don't include every chip seal street every year. We don't have the budget for it. And some roadways have pavement conditions that aren't conducive for a chip seal or a slurry seal or a micro seal. And we go out and we vet every single one of those. So that's what we do in this program.
Okay,
But I
so
can definitely get you that information.
Sure. Keep in mind, this is on the agenda for tomorrow, right? This contract.
Okay.
So, Anna, go ahead.
I'll try to be brief, Eric. It's already like after 6 o'clock. So here's the deal. Like the previous people that I know who represented my district had very large philosophical ideas. There were political systems that upset them, or they wanted huge infrastructure projects like building a bridge from Bremerton to Seattle. I don't have a big philosophical thing, but I do think that big chunks of District 6, it's like an equity thing. It's not like you guys say, hey, let's do a lot of work in District 7. It's because it's a newer thing. And as Eric and many of you have pointed out, it's a lot of the streets are either newer or rural. So they qualify for, more regular maintenance. District 6 isn't on anybody's way to anywhere, or most chunks of it. It's just like people going to the shipyard, coming home from the shipyard, or similar. It's not a ritzy district. So it just seems like I'd really like some equity for District 6, and I'd really like to do it without being annoying if I possibly can. And so I would very much like an answer to why the Rainier Taft constellation, because if you look at the map of what's going to get done north of 11th Street between Naval and Marine, there's only like these 3 little bits, and I'm just still not fully understanding it. But if you can get us an answer before council tomorrow, that would be super extremely very great. Yeah, I'm not going to let my passion, make me talk for a million years. So thank you all.
Okay, Tom, go ahead, and then Jeff.
All I wanted to say is, we didn't scope this project with a lens towards equity across districts, right? Intentionally so. I mean, we don't do that. We do in the big picture. There will be equity across, the city. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be addressing the appropriate street that needs the treatment at the right time, right? So I guess I just wanted to say that, we and the other thing is we try to because of the nature of the work, you have to kind of combine the work in one general area, right? So that's why we're not spreading it throughout the city. So.
Okay, Jeff.
Just a question and a quick comment. I love that chart, Tom, that you put up. That's super helpful. Is the bottom of that gray area, I don't know if you want to share your screen again real quick, is that kind of that 73 quality index where if you go below that, you just can't chip seal anymore? And my question is really like on the technical side, like
This
yeah, that
this
one.
chart right here, yeah, this is page, whatever it is, page 3 of the report, probably the executive summary of the report. And it says, it identifies this as the target zone for pavement rehab. It was just kind of a identifying what does a pavement management program, what is a goal of a pavement management program, I think is what this is all about. And this is about 85, this is about 65, 70-ish, something like that. And brand new pavements, 100, completely failed pavement is anything below, I think it's 25. 25 is about here down to 0. And so this is the target zone for rehab. And this is very cost-effective rehab. This is, very cost-effective. And once you get below 65, 60, somewhere in there, the costs start getting significant and they go up exponentially.
Right, to tear the whole road up. So my technical question was, if you try to chip seal a road that was below that target zone, is it the case that it just won't last as long and you're going to decrease on that curve really quickly? Or is it that like literally it'll fail? You can't implement the chip seal on that road. It'll, be
Go ahead,
sluggier.
Shane. Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, so there's different reasons why we preserve the road, right? And what we would do is we would look at pavement. So the big key in a chip seal is whether or not the pavement subgrade allows you to put in a chip seal, right? Because if you have a failing subgrade in a road, then a chip seal is not going to do anything, right? You want to go in there, you want to do an overlay, a more aggressive roadway preservation technique or reconstruction, that type of thing. But yeah, there's different reasons why we put down chip seal and slurry seal, and we put those down on the roadways that have good structural pavement to them. They don't have these distress issues like I was talking about before, like alligator cracking, longitudinal cracking, because this chip seal it's not a structural treatment. It's basically a pavement oxidation treatment, basically is what it is. So if there's any structural conditions, it's not a good candidate for a chip seal or a slurry seal. And so, yeah, that's when we go in, we do an overlay, or we do a reconstruction type treatment. Or we could, if there's very little structural issues with the roadway section, the roadway pavement section, then we can go in, we can do some dig outs, what we call them, fix those sections, and then we can come over the top with a slurry seal or a chip seal, and that would be okay. But we're fixing those issues with subgrade, and those issues are very few and far between on a roadway segment. It's not like, hey, I have to redo half the road just to put this chip seal down. That's when we would look at doing a different treatment. So it all depends on the roadway and the deficiencies that we're looking at, where the right treatment is for that particular roadway.
And just to tag on to that, and those dig outs and those spot repairs that Shane mentioned, part of this contract. And so we have, and actually I believe 15th Street has some repairs associated with that. So this is a great contract. This is really a good contract. It's going to be, it allows us to really get a lot of bang for the buck. So.
No, yeah, unless you have more to add to Shane there. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm done with that. I did have a question for Councilor Mockler though, if when the time comes.
Oh sure, I'll just get my comment out of the way, which is just a simple thank you to the deep dive here on the bridge and everything. I know we only have so many hours to share brainwaves, but I appreciate honest questions because they are. I will say that they're good ones. I don't want to micromanage because I know this gets incredibly complex, but as much as we can, it is helpful to definitely know some of the background. So we don't just have to say to somebody who asks, like, why wasn't my road done? I don't know, go ask Tom. We can give hopefully a quick on the spot, like, oh, it's complicated and this is how they choose it. So thank you to everybody. That's it.
Okay, Shane, you had a question for Anna, and then I was going to make my comment, having a little bit of experience as a council member in streets.
Okay,
in all
thank you.
that's been done. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Mockler, what you indicated the streets that you're looking at were East Finney Ridge, right? And Callow north of 15th, is that correct?
No, sorry, two separate questions, Shane. Please just
Okay.
call me Anna in these meetings.
Okay, all right.
It's one question is, okay, I get it that chip seal can only be applied on things that have a score of more or less 73 or higher. I get that part. But I'm asking about why weren't streets like, hang on, I'm looking at a map in my mind. Cambrian was chosen from 15th and to, I think, 19th. And Wyckoff was chosen from 15th to, I think, 24th. Is that correct? So I get that, but I don't understand why other roads that have a similar score were not chosen. And instead, this cul-de-sac up at Rainier and Taft that has a very good score, quite a high score, was chosen instead. That's one concern. Whole other separate concern over here in stack 3 is what will be done about these two streets that are in, I think, marginal condition. And one is East Finney Ridge Drive, and the other is Callow from 15th to 24th. Yeah, 15th to 24th.
Okay,
So just
all
two
right.
totally separate questions. Yeah, no,
Yes,
I
okay,
yeah,
all right,
that clear?
thank you. Yes, thank you for clarifying that for me. Yeah,
sure.
all right.
So my comment is building up on Anna's comment is that latter question, that's fine if you answer that, but that's not what's on the agenda for tomorrow. So we're all clear. That's not the issue, whether that's going to get addressed. So where do I start? And I'm going to try to do this in like 3 minutes or less. This has been a huge priority for me in my entire career in council. I have come up with, I believe, innovative ways to bring in additional funding for streets. I'm not chastising the current mayor. I addressed this with the previous mayor and the mayor before that, as far as inadequate funding of streets, in particular local street funding. A long time ago, the number that was thrown out was $6 million a year that we would need to, in order to adequately address street funding. And this would be $6 million a year for, I don't know how many years, to get us up to where we need to be. We are woefully short of that number on a yearly basis. Going back in time, I think it was 2006, 2007 was the last time the city had a dedicated street crew until recently, that actually did the type of work, Anna, that you're mentioning, which is overlays and new pavement. And they measured in lane miles, how many lane miles of streets they did. I think that's where you want to get at, is the city needs to start looking at those poor streets that aren't eligible for chip seal. When are you going to address those? That's the crux of your question. And that's a funding mechanism. And one question, which we shouldn't be talking about, I don't think now, because it's not on the agenda, is what are we doing with that $2.5 million surplus? Why aren't we doing some of the local streets that, like you're mentioning? But there's a broader issue, and is, do we have adequate funding? No, we don't. I would love the rest of my council members to join me and say we need to carve out adequate funding, whatever that looks like. And
We
there's
need
all
to carve
kinds.
out adequate funding.
We need to carve out adequate funding, and that could be within the current budget, but probably not realistic. What additional revenues can you choose from? And there's a whole host of them, and you can look at what other communities have done. The city of Tacoma has a program where they went to the taxpayers and say, okay, give us 8 years, and then this tax sunsets, and let us prove what we did with that extra additional money. And then you tell us if you want to continue with that. I'm not saying this is the answer, but you can, councilmatically, you can increase the car tabs from $20 to $40, and that's for local streets. There's all kinds of things you can do, but it really requires a discussion of the council setting the policy. Love to have that discussion. Never, it's always been a very difficult thing for me to get past. Whenever I tried any of these things, I got a lot of pushback from whoever the mayor was, again, not picking on this current one. And I remember, Tom, you'll probably remember this as well. I kept on pushing and pushing. We got enough money, and then Public Works did hire a street crew. You guys do have a street crew. I think we hired 4 people. You hired 4 people and a truck and all that stuff. And now you have the sidewalk program going on. You do have some capacity to do streets. So this isn't something that's going to be solved overnight, but I'm ready to roll up my sleeves, even though I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt today. To work with you guys, I would love to have a council that says, all right, gosh darn it, this is what we're doing, and we're going to fund streets. I haven't seen the intestinal fortitude yet, because you're going to see a budget and there's going to be no money in it. And then it's going to be like, well, what do you want to cut out? Or are you okay with increasing taxes? And it never goes anywhere. So with that, I think we're done talking about this for tonight. It's been a great discussion. It's getting to be a long night, and we have one other item. So unless someone is dying to get a word on this, let's go ahead and go to the next item. Anna, go ahead.
I just want to thank all of you for spending so much time on this. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you, everyone. Okay, next item is, and this should be fairly quick. I saw your email, Anna, a discussion regarding capital project updates moving forward. It says presenter committee members. So I think I got the gist of it. The last time we talked, and we talk on a quarterly basis about projects, I think your concern was, correct me if I'm wrong, but why are we going all over these if there's been no change in project, or why are they explaining the projects, and can we expedite that process? And I'm perfectly good with that. And I think, Tom, are you good with that as well? We'll just let us read it.
However you want to, we started doing that because of a request by the Public Works Committee. So, we're happy to just answer questions. We're happy to push out the information on the projects, and then just council ask questions, and we'll answer them as best we can.
Okay, so Jeff and Anna, hang on Ned, real quick. What do you want me to do for we come up with this next in August? Do you want me to just bring up the like one section will be stormwater or whatever, and say any questions from the committee on stormwater, and has that list, and then you ask the questions? Or because there'll be a summary, you saw that today, there's a summary of where the status of projects are. You guys good with that?
Yeah, that's good. I had a question.
Ned's shaking his head. Ned is shaking his head. Go ahead, Ned. Well, what's going on, man?
So if you're gonna get into a deep dive, like into a capital project that you want good answers on, unless I bring that person to this meeting, you're not gonna get a good answer from me that's satisfying potentially. So when we do the deep dive, everybody who owns that project is here.
Yeah.
And we don't typically bring people, like Bill Davis wasn't here tonight because he didn't have an item, right? So what would help is if you want, and this is my suggestion, is if you have a question about a specific project, like ask it a few days in advance so we can line up the people that need to be here to answer your question. Otherwise, you're going to get me and you're going to be disappointed.
Okay, fair enough.
Right?
Jeff and Anna, are you okay with that approach? No. Okay.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that's good.
Can I just speak really quickly?
Yeah.
Sure.
Jeff, I'm sorry, I yield to you. Okay, so Hillary sends out is this correct? Hillary sends out a request to everybody a week before the Public Works Committee meeting, and everybody gives updates. That typically doesn't get to us until like the day of or the day before the Public Works Committee meeting.
Yeah.
We cannot make bricks from straw, or I don't know, maybe we can, but we can't do this other thing of like saying, hey, we're going to need Bill Davis or Eric Burris because we want to do a deep dive on this. If we're not getting like a fully updated agenda, we didn't get this one until like what, 11 o'clock this morning. So
how about a month?
How can we be of more use?
I mean, if you have it like this, like unless it's just burning, like I need an answer now. I mean, if you read it and you've got questions, like, it's just if you want like either I have to bring everybody here so that you can answer, like you can ask any question you want, or I need enough advance notice somehow to manage that. Go ahead, Tom.
You got our project updates today, and honestly saying, well, we're promised to get you the project updates a week early, and we're going to promise to get you the agenda a week early. Honestly, that's not going to happen. I mean,
yeah,
we are slammed. I mean, we are beyond capacity. So how about this? You have our project updates today. Take a look at them in the next few days, and if there's something that you want an update on, then we can just do it next month. How about that?
that's what I was suggesting.
I'll jump in. Yeah, I think to synthesize that. So if we just week prior to the public works meeting, look through the list of projects, which isn't, it's rare on new ones added or removed. And I'm kind of like, oh man, I haven't heard anything on that Manette Sewer Beach decommission, and I'm burning to know. Then we can give you a heads up. Otherwise, we'll just expect. So I'm going to turn. So I think I'm confused between whether the proposal is to ask for updates at every public works meeting or stick to the 3 months cycle.
Depends on how you want to manage it, honestly. That's what we were doing. I think that prior Public Works Committee members were frustrated, and so they asked for quarterly updates, and so that's how we ended up with the quarterly updates. So we're happy to support you as best we can.
And I'm hearing a lack of interest in that, but you do want, like, there's going to be questions for specific projects and you want to be able to talk about them here. I just want to figure out how I'm prepared to address those and bring everybody in, so we're always ready to address any question. That's kind of
and we're using our judgment. If there's something coming up that we think is important for the committee to know about, something substantive, we're going to point that out, and it's going to make the agenda because we've thought about it. But if there's other items that that are of interest to you and we didn't think about it, then it's your opportunity to ask those questions.
And that's what I'm bouncing my head of exactly. Every 3 months, something might have been updated and we'll miss it. But I think, as long as y'all know, oh, there's a significant change to this project, instead of waiting 3 months to talk about it, we'll bring it up at the next meeting. I'm good with keeping the 3 months, unless I hear rumblings in somewhere, and then I can say, oh, can you talk about this a week in advance?
Okay, so I was okay with the quarterly updates. I know the meeting's a little longer, but I liked it the way we had it. So maybe Anna, now that you understand the process, and so every quarter we have everybody that has a project here available to us to answer our questions. Are you okay with just us having it the way we had it? Yeah.
So, here's what I was proposing is, instead of describing each capital project in fall, which is what staffers were doing every month, not just, quarterly. And then, and it's like month after month would go by and there'd be no update. We're still looking for funding, or there'd be just no update. So what I was proposing was that if there's, kind of like basically the honor system, if there's an update, give us the update. Right. And if there's anything that we want to take a deep dive in, we will get a hold of Tom and he'll parcel it out, like what, a week before Public Works? More or less.
I'm just telling you that it's a scramble for us every month before Public Works to put together the project updates.
Okay.
It's tough. It's tough to put this together. We're happy to do it, but trying to push that forward a week in advance is just, I don't want to commit to that. I'd like to not try to add to our plates and make have to expedite things. So I'd like to provide the information to the committee the way that we're doing it now, because we're able to do it.
Okay, it's almost done, Ned. So it just seemed like a lot of staffers were having to come in and recite the description of the entire capital project. After we've heard about it for like 7 or 10 or 12 times, a mere fraction of how often you guys have listened to it. Really, the question is there an update? And then my final comment on this round, because criminy, it's 6:30 p.m., is that I know everybody likes a capital project. All human beings like a capital project, but they prefer it to maintenance. Maintenance is seriously unsexy. But several of the issues we've debated tonight, Tom and Ned and Vicky and Hillary, are not capital projects, right? Like this chip seal thing. So I'm just saying that we can't, like, if there's going to be something new coming up at the study session, be nice if like we knew about it in committee. If it's not an emergency, it'd be nice if it came through the committee before it appeared suddenly at council. I'm gonna stop talking now. I can do this. Thank you.
Okay, and before I turn to Ned, so it sounds like we're gonna compromise here. So, and I think it's a good compromise in everyone's interest. We're gonna continue with the quarterly updates just the way we've been doing. But it's my job, or whoever is the chair, to do a speed round through it. And I thought I've done this before. So the first of the year is important to get a good overview of everything because you have new committee members. We're all in agreement on that the first time. But subsequent quarterly meetings during that year, if there's no change, then we'll just say no change. When you look at these capital projects, they're grouped by project manager. So stormwater, utilities, water, those subject matter experts, you're only looking at like six, 7 people. We should be able to get through them real quick. And I'll just say like utilities, water, anything needs any changes on any of these, Bill, referring to Davis, no changes. And then boom, move on to the next one. So that's how we'll do it. So that will speed the process up. Okay, Ned, are you interested in having this meeting last longer? Go ahead.
I think it's in my best interest to extend it like another hour. Yeah, I was going to suggest the same thing. The only thing that in that description is, did something change? Like, is there a significant update, Gunner? Or if you guys have a question, like they're there to, like, if you look through it and go, hey, I'm curious about this project, but I like the speed round, and I don't, I'd like a speed round every time if we could do it that way.
No doubt.
I understand that, hey, first of the year, there's a new public works committee. So that's probably a good, potentially that's probably a good one to do a deep dive. But if we can get everybody here and get them out like within 20 minutes or 30 minutes of that, and maybe we can do that round at first instead of last, right? Instead of like make that the start of the agenda and get people out of the meeting that don't need to be there. So that's
a good idea. So I know you work with someone there, Hillary, but I'll let you take that as guidance. So when we do the quarterlies, if that works out and some of those presenters, they're not going to be presenting a general issue, maybe that meeting, you should go ahead and we'll do updates first, but that'll be you and your Tom's call. So, okay, sounds great.
You're making friends with staff right now.
All right. Well, no, this is good. So thank you, Anna, for bringing it up. Okay. Any other emergent items for the good of the order? Well, we've had a really good meeting. So, Anna, is that a hand or is that peace signal?
It was not a peace symbol. I just want to really follow up on you, Eric, and just really say kudos to Hillary for the minutes that she writes up. They're the best ones I've seen so far. That's it.
Well, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right. Everyone try to get something to eat. It's past dinner time for me. So good night, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.